Hello and welcome to another tune setup tutorial within Gran Turismo 7 of course, and this time we are tuning a car which a number of people find to be a fairly challenging vehicle for obvious reasons. I reviewed it recently as well, wherein we discussed some of those issues, and that is of course the classic 60s Tomaso Mangusta. Now for this particular tune, for those who are unfamiliar with my tuning tutorials, or at least this type of tutorial in GT7, because the point system is so finicky, really, every little thing you do affects it, even stuff like diff and suspension, I prefer to do only the suspension and only the diff to give you a backbone to work from, so then you can fit whatever else you want on top of that, drop the weight, improve the tyres, the power, as you see fit. So you can build it for basically whatever point level you need, with this as the fundamental handling side to work from. And as you can see from the lap times on the screen, the difference between the stock car at the bottom there and the tuned version just above it is pretty drastic, around 3.5 seconds just from tuning the suspension and the diff. Now to move into the tuning side of things in the video, as I said, all I've actually fitted is the racing suspension and the fully customizable LSD or limited slip diff, and in terms of the settings, of course we're going to run through those just now. So first of all, as far as the ride height goes on this particular car, you'll notice I haven't dropped it by as much as I usually would. The reason why is very simple. This car has very weird suspension geometry where if you drop it too much, it will actually bottom out on the suspension and it won't turn at all. So it's not ideal to have that happen, especially for a circuit tune, so I would recommend going to 130 or so. The anti-roll is stock. We've increased the compression on the dampers to 38 with 42 on the expansion. As far as the frequency though for the suspension, we've got 2.2 and 2.4. We do have as well a little bit of camber on this build, none on the front, 2 degrees on the back, just to give it that bit of extra stability. As far as the toe just below it, as you can see that is neutral, as we would always do. And then as far as the diff, the standard diff compared to the racing diff is basically where you're going to see most of the difference with this particular tune, because the standard one is basically just a drift car, at least in its initial form. So first of all, we've got 40, then for acceleration and braking, I personally found that using 40 as well was a pretty nice setup to go with. So if you want to change it up, of course you could, but I would recommend trying this out first, seeing what you think of it, and then of course running back and maybe changing the numbers around to suit you. Ultimately though, as with all of these quick tutorials, that's pretty much it. As I said, you can fit whatever else you want, go for whatever parts you want, and the tyres alone, for example, will make a massive difference. As far as the ones that I've got, they're still comfort spec, so of course sports or racing ones are going to make a huge difference, but now let's take it out on the track to show what it can actually do. Now when it's out on the track, as I already said, the lap time difference is one of the most drastic differences on what is a relatively short track, really. It's only a couple of minutes or so for a road car, but the difference that you'll notice between this and the normal Mangusta is mostly in terms of two things. One is how much more taut and more composed the suspension is, so there's nowhere near as much wallowing, it doesn't float around like a speedboat anymore, and secondly is the amount of throttle which you can safely use. So again, with the stock version, for those who have driven it stock, it easily slides the tail out. It's very soft, it's all over the place, it's very boatish, kind of like a mid-engine muscle car really, whereas this tune allows you to use much more of that throttle. I would still recommend approaching this car's performance and handling with a more smooth, measured approach. Don't act like this is a modern car, even with this tuning applied, because it's simply not. It's still going to have that classic car kind of vibe, but with a car like this, with a tune like this, I would encourage you to embrace the slight tail-happy nature that it can have, because as you can see here from the lap, I get the tail out a couple of times and actually use that to your advantage. Overall, it's pretty damn quick for its point level, and ultimately it's a car which is, I would say, more so a collector's piece, but definitely does have some use in those lower point levels. So if you decide to use this build or a variation of it, I hope of course you have a ton of fun with it. I really hope it helps out, because I know a number of people were finding it to be a challenging car, rightfully so, and if you want to check out more like this, of course they're here on the channel. But until next time, I'll see you then, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.